you think about the most popular metal bands, especially from the 90s and the early 2000s, they're all rhythm machines. Korn, Pantera, Gojira, Meshuggah, Lamb of God, Mastodon, and every metalcore and deathcore band. Rammstein are as rhythmically based as any of them, and probably even more. And they got the kind of riffs that make you want to smash someone's face through a plate glass window. Richard Crispa and Paul Landers both have right hands like Malcolm Young, and you can hear it on songs like Sonne, Mein Teil, and Du Hast. For 2 decades, PC weirdos have been speaking out against Rammstein's militaristic imagery, their BDSM imagery, and a giant penis cannon that we can't show you thanks to the YouTube police. Rammstein were arrested and jailed in 1999 after engaging in a fully clothed act involving a fake phallus. In 2009, their Pussy video came out, and it's straight up hardcore porn, with the band members' faces superimposed over porn stars. And this year, as we said, the Deutschland video was criticized for Nazi imagery and the band members being depicted as concentration camp prisoners about to be executed. Sure, it's provocative and all, but if you actually pay attention to the video, you can see that it's about the history and potential future of human conflict. And if you read the lyrics, it's clear Till Lindemann loves his homeland, but sometimes struggles with justifying that pride due to Germany's past. German is a brutal language. Just take it from Tim Allen.
The word butterfly. In French, papillon. In Spanish, mariposa. In German, Schmetterling!
Look, I love Rammstein, but something is sort of lost in translation when it goes from German to English. Take Sonne, for example. 1, here comes the sun. 2, here comes the sun. 3, she is the brightest star of all. 4, here comes the sun.
How much did you have to scale this down because of the Alamo Dome and the height of the building?
We had to adapt mostly the delay tower positions. The stage itself, not so much. It's a huge venue. It's beautiful here. So we were able to do pretty much the full show. We just had to improvise a bit. Not improvise, but we had done this in Europe a few times, where we had to adapt some of the outlying structures that they're just supports. So it doesn't really affect the show.
How much have you had to learn trying to pull off these guys' stage show, especially with all the pyro and all the really unique devices that they have in order to move fire from one point to another?
Obviously, the SFX is one of the main points of the show. The band is well known for it. The rider, which is obviously the document that gets sent out to in advance to the shows, states no pyro, no show. So that's pretty much a indispensable element to the show. Obviously, it being pyrotechnics, especially with the flames, there is a lot of planning, a lot of care involved, a lot of logistics associated with it, even with stuff as simple as just getting the deliveries right, obviously, because we don't travel around with all this pyro fuel and all this CO2 we need for obviously the effects. So that gets delivered locally every time. So just the planning of that is quite extensive. We learned on the job. Obviously, when I came into this production, this was already a very well-oiled machine. The band always has scenic elements. They were always famous for that since their start. I doubt there's anything that compares to it. Not to sound arrogant, but it is probably the biggest production on the road right now. I would say this is a mix of, rock and theater and, anything you can think of. Fireworks. It's just really spectacular.
Richard Sven Crispa, born 24th of June 1967, is where we begin our journey into Rammstein. At the age of 14, he would buy a guitar whilst visiting Czechoslovakia. And although he simply planned to sell it for profit when he returned to Germany, he met a girl who seemed to be impressed with the simple fact that he even owned one. This opened his eyes into the world of becoming a musician.
Kind of bored, and I was walking around and I saw this music shop, and in East Germany you couldn't buy any instruments. It's really hard to get instruments there, so I felt like, okay, I could buy an acoustic guitar and make some money on it, because I was quite on myself at the age of 14. Then I went back to the camp where we had our tent, and there was this girl asking me, because she saw me with the guitar, to play something for her, but I couldn't, and I told her I can't. And to make myself clear, I put the guitar and was like strumming on the guitar, and somehow on her face made the impression to me that she liked what she was hearing, even though I couldn't play. So I think that was a key moment to start to make music.
But he would soon discover his future singer, Till Lindemann. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in November of '89, Richard moved back to his hometown of Schwerin, where Till was working as a basket weaver and playing drums for a band called First Arsch, roughly meaning first ass in English. During this period, Richard lived with Oliver Riedel and Christoph Schneider, who were in bands of their own. And sometime during 1993, he convinced Oliver and Christoph to start a new project with him, and then persuaded Lindemann to join on vocals after apparently hearing him sing whilst working. Paul Landers and Christian Lorenz were members of a band called Feeling B, active from 1983, and were also recruited into Richard's new musical venture. It's unclear exactly when the full Rammstein lineup would be complete, but we do know that Kruspe, Riedel, Schneider and Lindemann entered a Battle of the Band style competition in 1994 with a demo tape, and it seems as if they were called Temple Prayers at the time. They won the competition, with the prize being 1 week of recording time in a professional studio. They would officially settle on the name Rammstein in 1994 and began playing some local shows. The name itself would be taken from the airshow disaster that occurred on Sunday the 28th of August 1988 at the USAF Rammstein Air Base in West Germany, where 3 aircraft collided and resulted in the death of 70 people as the wreckage exploded and sent fireballs into the crowd. On January the 4th, 1995, Rammstein would secure a record deal with an independent label in Berlin called Motor Music and start work on their debut album, Herzleid. They had a general idea of the music they wanted to create. Richard said he wanted to fuse their hands to machines, whilst Christoph describes the early Rammstein concept as monotonous, slightly boring heavy music. In the beginning, Richard was very keen on trying to replicate American styles and seeing if it could be absorbed into the music he was writing at the time, but quickly realized that it simply wouldn't work.
You know, their story is like a classic story. You know, they won a rock band competition in Berlin where they were given studio time as the first prize with those tapes. Richard, who has always been sort of curious about new stuff and listening and so forth, he liked Clawfinger, and Clawfinger they were massive in Germany. I liked the music. I liked that it was in German. Till is different, not so good, but different. Out of tune and insecure, but different. But I like the guitar work, you know, on the demos. Everything they do now, they did back then, but in just smaller scale. But the concept, you know, was there.
Herzleid would be released on the 25th of September 1995. Over the course of the next 18 months, it would enter the German charts 5 times. It would be recorded in Stockholm, Sweden at Polar Studios, which was a studio ABBA had put together back in the late 70s. Although not their first choice, Jacob Hallner would be the producer for Rammstein's first album, which was arguably a strange one as he couldn't speak German and Rammstein couldn't speak much English. So it was very difficult for the group to communicate with each other. The reason for this partnership, though, was simple. Richard was a fan of Swedish metal band Clawfinger, who were big in Germany, and Jacob had produced their debut record, Deaf, Dumb, Blind. Jacob realized early on how clear it was that Rammstein were operating as a unit, with no individual leader making the decisions throughout the recording process. This did present certain problems though, as he recalls how Till was very shy and nervous about his ability to sing, and somewhat relied on the support of the other 5 members.
It's very German, and some people told us it's overdoing and it's too German, but that's the way we are, and we can change it, and we are not a fake, you know, we are very natural.
However, this made it almost impossible for Jacob to do his job. Despite this conflict, Herzleid would become a groundbreaking album.
And behind me, live music from David Lynch's favourite band, Rammstein. That's all to come, all of that.
Less than a year later, Rammstein were touring throughout Germany and also made their first TV appearance on MTV in the UK. Halfway through their second song, the show cut to an ad break, as Till had cracked open a fake blood capsule on his head, and apparently this was just too much for a British audience to handle. This was Rammstein though, and their eccentric on-stage performance, as well as pyrotechnics, would soon become their trademark style.
I felt lonely and boring on stage. I have to do something.
When you really break down Rammstein's music song by song, you'll hear industrial stuff, heavy metal, techno, nu metal grooves, groove metal grooves, gothic stuff, and straight up rock and roll. One reason why a lot of bands don't last as long as Rammstein is because there's not enough of an audience to keep them going through the good times and the bad times. If you appeal to such a dynamic crowd of music fans, it's less likely that your music is going to sound stale 20 years down the line as trends ebb and flow. Rammstein are still as fresh as a goddamn daisy, and it's because of how unique they are and how many people they appeal to. They're like Iron Maiden meets Slipknot and Cirque du Soleil. If you want to see blood, fire, explosions, BDSM, cannibalism, and a man playing the keyboard while riding a treadmill, there's only one band to see, and it ain't f***ing Coldplay. I've seen some wild stuff in my time. Few foreign language bands have ever achieved longevity here in the United States. They've all been Macarenas and ketchup songs, but Du Hast was no one-hit wonder. Rammstein's highest charting album in the US is their latest one, 2009's Love Is For Everyone. And Rammstein's new song Deutschland has racked up 42 million views in a month and hit #1 in Germany. Only the second time that's ever happened. One reason Rammstein's been able to remain so consistent, they've never had a lineup change in 25 years. It's been difficult to stay together at times. Richard Crispa calls it a marriage with no sex, and the band members have even gone to therapy together to work out their differences. Rammstein have never had a Spinal Tap or Yoko Ono moment, tempting the band to overconceptualize and futz around with artsy trash. They took the AC/DC route, and for that, we're thankful. Rammstein are perfect the way they are.